Hello, Duranis here, and welcome back to episode 3 of Kerbal Space Program. Before we start today, just needed a little bit more science to unlock one more tech node, because I actually need to get the unmanned command probes. So we're here on the runway, which we haven't done anything on yet. What we're going to do is just a quick materials bay, and mystery goo, and a crew report. Hello, thank you. And then we're going to EVA and do an EVA report. We've already got that one. And we'll take the data. And I'm just going to hop on down and grab a surface sample and do an EVA report. And let's hop back up. Said hop back up and fall on your butt. Okay. And up, and excellent. Grab, thank you. And board. And let's do a pressure data, and we'll keep that. So I think that's about everything we can grab from the runway, so up and away we go. Let's just move that up a stage. So this looks a little bit sketchy, but it does actually work. So just got to do this very slowly because it's pretty bouncy. Whoa. Okay, stay. Yeah, even Jeb's not too sure. I know, he's pretty happy. He wants some more. Okay. Okay, throttling up and firing now. So we're just going to head straight up and do a couple more experiments here. So let's do the other one, log pressure data, and mystery goo. Let's keep the data, and science junior, and keep the data. Let's see how much fuel we get here. So we don't quite get out the lower atmosphere, but yeah, that's fine. We've got enough science for our purposes anyway. So it's just might as well do the other mystery goos as we're here. It's going to be duplicated, but it doesn't really matter. So did we take the crew report? Excellent. Let's deploy the landing gears. And let's just mosey on back down. So, what is that? Oh, that's actually our debris, which we're... Is that actually falling, or is that just... Okay, we've created an anti-gravity drive somehow. Wow, never seen that before. Parachutes, yes, parachutes, that'd be good. Oh no, it is falling. That's fine. Yeah, that looked pretty strange. Oh, face full of parachutes there. And yeah, more than enough parachutes. That's quite scary as well. Orbital speed of 174 meters per second. Yeah, surface speed, that's better. And let's just slowly bring it down a little bit. Come on. Anytime today. Anytime. 3, 2, 1, 0. And we're still quite high above. Awesome. Actually looks pretty cool. And we've landed, so recover vessel. So yeah, just a quick little trip there just to grab a handful of extra science. Like I said, for the mission I have in mind, I need to get the unmanned probes. Actually, we've got 70 science from that, which is not too shabby. Yeah, so flight control. So this gives us the first unmanned command probe, but it also gives us the Mechjeb module, which can be used as an unmanned command probe, which is pretty handy because you can mount it on the side of the rocket rather than having to stick it on the top. And it also gives us the inline reaction wheel, which is also really, really useful for what we want to do. So let's grab that. We've actually got 48 science, but we've got nothing we can spend it on, so we'll just save that. So yeah, just a quick one just to unlock that, and I'll meet you back on the launch pad with the next mission. So here we are on the launch pad, ready to launch our next mission. I did say I was going to skip through the ascent stages, but we have new windows, so I wanted to just sort of show these and discuss the mod that they come from as well. So let's just get ready to launch. We're going to set up to about 3/4 of the way. The rocket we've got here has 6 solid rocket boosters on the outside. They're thrust limited to about 50%. It's then got 6 stacks of liquid fuel tanks in the middle with KW rocketry engines on the bottom. And then we've got a central stack here of liquid fuel with a thrust limited KW rocketry engine on the bottom of that. So that's limited to about 50%. So this central stack should burn out about half as quickly as these outer stacks. And then we've got our payload on the top, which has our mapping probes. So yeah, we're throttling up, and computer controls already on, and launching. So yeah, as we're going up here, yeah, these 2 windows here, these come from a mod called Mechjeb. Mechjeb is a bit of a controversial mod. Some people really hate it, basically because it can be used to completely autopilot your ship. You can use it to do everything from the ascent stage and getting into orbit, to setting up maneuver nodes and plotting intercept courses to other planets, to landing, and I believe it even has a rover autopilot now. I don't actually like using the mod for the autopilot. I've tried it out before. It is pretty good, but it can be a bit hit and miss if you're not set up just right for it. It doesn't always know what to do, and I don't really enjoy using the autopilot anyway. What I do really love the mod for, though, is these information windows. So you've got the Delta V here, and as I've said previously, Delta V is basically how much oomph you have in space, and oomph is a technical expression. So for example, getting into orbit around Kerbin takes around about 4,000 meters per second of Delta V. So with this you can work out if you have enough fuel basically to get somewhere, and it saves having to do it all on paper and doing maths, and no one wants to do maths when they're playing a game. Here we have orbital information, so you can see here it shows our apoapsis height and time to apoapsis, inclination, and all sorts of useful information here. So the ascent stage and orbital maneuvers and all that can be done from within this screen rather than having to switch to the map screen, which is a lot prettier than switching out to the map. Other things that are really cool are the SmartAss module here. The only thing I ever really use this for is the node, and basically if you click that and you have a maneuver node set up, it will keep you pointing at that maneuver node. And what that is really useful for is if you have a really low thrust engine like a nuclear engine or an ion engine, which is even worse, you can basically click the node, set up and maneuver, click the node button, and then set your throttle up, and it will just keep you pointing at that node. So if you've got a 2-hour burn, for example, which you can have with ion engines, you can just hit the node, set the thrusters up, and sort of walk away for 2 hours, and then come back before it finishes off just to shut the throttle down again. So it makes things like the ion engines a bit more useful. I'm just going to start turning into my gravity turn here. So yeah, the other thing I really like about Mechjeb is the actual module itself that you put on your ships to get all of this information. The good thing about it is you can radially mount it, so you can put it on the side of a tank rather than having to sit it on the top. So at the moment the only other unmanned module I have is the Stay Putnik, and if you put that on top of a stack you can't put anything else on top of that. So if you're trying to make a sort of slimline rocket, it makes it quite difficult. Whereas with the Mechjeb module you can just clip it to the side and then build the rest of your stuff on the top of it. The Mechjeb module doesn't have torque controls like the other unmanned modules, but if you put an SAS or inline reaction wheel on the top, it solves the problem anyway, and it does it much better than the unmanned modules in the first place. So. Also, it's really cool if you've got a ship that you're going to take into multiple parts, so you've got a docking port on it and you want to attach a lander and then reattach it later. You can just put a Mechjeb module on sort of the mothership part, and you can still then control that. So when you're doing sort of manoeuvres to do your docking, you can still have control of your main part without either having to have a Kerbal on there or another unmanned probe. So it's got a lot of uses other than the autopilot, but it does get a lot of slating on the forums because some people are fairly vocal about it being a cheaty option. To be honest, as far as I'm concerned, Kerbal's very much as a sandbox game. It's single player. There's no real competition on it, so play it however you want to play it, really. If you enjoy just building the rockets and you want Mechjeb to fly them for you, that's absolutely fine by me. So yeah, we're coming up to the upper stage of the atmosphere here, 40k up, and our upper abscissa is coming up to 60k. So you can see here it's really nice because I don't have to keep switching out to the map mode, checking the AP, switching back, etc, etc. I can just look at it here. So we're going to tilt over just a little bit more before we ditch this stage. And we're still quite a way away from our apoapsis, so we can afford to tilt over a bit more. And this rocket's a little bit jerky when you control it because of the positions of the SAS modules I have in the payload. That makes it act a little bit funky, but it's still reasonably controllable. Let's just ditch them out stages. And come up to 81k, so I'm just going to cut the engines there. And that looks pretty cool as they pirouette off into the distance. And yeah, so let's just time accelerate onto the AP. And I'm just going to set up a manoeuvre node just to give me an idea of when to start the burn here. It's not entirely necessary, but just sort of give you an idea of how to do it. So it's a little bit less. 80, 84, 71. Where's our AP gone? There it is, 81. So a little touch more. 79, 83, close enough. So it's going to be a 2-minute burn, so I will cut here and I'll be back with you when I've got my manoeuvre node set up to head towards the moon. So it's coming up to our burn towards the moon. It's not going to be exactly like this because we're going to be ditching the lower stage midway through, so it's going to change our thrust to weight ratio a little bit, but it should be close enough that we get somewhere in the vicinity. So we're sort of aiming for a 100-kilometre orbit around the moon. We're going to be adjusting that once we detach the probe, but we want to try and get to roughly the right distance so that we don't have to use too much fuel on the probe to adjust it once we get there. So it's getting ready to ditch this stage, and just ditch it. And I do really love them fairings. So you can see here we've got our launch body here and our probes on the top. Let's just switch back and see what that's doing. Let's just time accelerate a little bit. And yep, see the orbit's gradually pushing out now. And 30 seconds left. 20. Let's stop time accelerating. Let's just manoeuvre up just to hit back on that node again. So I'm going to start throttling down, getting ready to get into position here. And cut the engines. I'm just going to kill this manoeuvre node just so I can see what's going on. And let's just burn a little bit more, just to get a little bit closer. So like I said, we're aiming for about 100 kilometers here. So we're going to get ready to cut the engines just about now. 100, almost dead on, perfect. So yeah, now we're going to use the Kerbal alarm clock, not the keyphone, Kerbal alarm clock, and add an alarm for sphere of influence change. We're going to set it to 10 seconds and add the alarm, and then we're going to time accelerate. And let's go a little bit faster now we outlive the orbit of Kerbin. And yeah, fairly straightforward to get into orbit around the moon. We're just going to get near the periapsis and then just burn retrograde. Should take probably about 230 delta V to do that. And we're going to get sort of in a rough equatorial orbit. It's not going to be exact, which is pretty much perfect for what we need anyway, because we actually need to get the probe into a polar orbit, so we're at a 90-degree inclination. So I'll sort of show that once we get in a bit further. Let's add another alarm for the periapsis and set that to about 15 seconds out. And periapsis would be useful. There we go, add the alarm. And let's just time accelerate again. And that's what I really like about Kerbal Alarm Clock. When it works properly, it saves you having to fiddle around, warping fast, warping slow, just trying not to shoot past your markers. Let's go to the retrograde marker and just start burning. So we want a roughly equatorial orbit. It doesn't matter if it's slightly inclined, but we need it still roughly equatorial so we can get onto Minmus afterwards. But if it's slightly inclined, it just saves us a little bit of delta V in the probe stage. And we want to bring the apoapsis down to about 100k as well. So we can see this coming down now. And it's 400, 300, 150, 127. Yeah, that should be fine. So yeah, that's pretty much where we want it. It's slightly inclined, which again is pretty much exactly what we want for this. So we're just going to scoot on around to the daylight side, and just so we can see what's going on when we deploy this probe. Come on, come on, come on. So about here should be good. And let's just rotate around a little bit so we can see what's going on. That away. And yeah, we managed to cram quite a lot of stuff into a fairly small space here, so let's just decouple our first mapping probe. And let's deploy our makeshift solar panels. Looks pretty cool. So we haven't actually got the deployable solar panels yet, so this is the next best thing. And let's deploy our scanners. I do really love this Infernal Robotics mod. It's such cool things you can do with it. And yeah, let's extend the transmitter because why not? So yeah, on here we have the Kethane scanner, so that will scan for Kethane, which we can mine up later and convert to fuel. We have the magnetometer, which we can use to detect ores, so we're actually out of range at the moment. It's got to be a bit closer, but that's fine. We've got the ScanSat sensors on here, so let's get them going. And that's what we're actually going to use to build our maps up with. And let's activate the engine. So yeah, quite a bit of stuff all crammed into that relatively small space. So let's quickly pop back to the map view and add maneuver, and let's just get this going. So our maneuver nodes, I actually had to restart the game because our maneuver nodes were having some issues. When I was trying to set them up, they kept disappearing and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Which was making it a bit of a nightmare to do. It seems to still be having similar issues, so let's just use the PreciseNode here, I think, to do this rather than trying to use the actual maneuver node there. So it's going to be a little bit more fiddly using this. So yeah, we want to go that way and burn retrograde a little bit. So you can see as we're adjusting our inclination, it's pushing our AP out because we're adding speed to our orbit. So then we have to just take the speed back out again. Oh, not that one, that one. Cool. So yeah, it's just a case of fiddling with it, getting the changing the inclination, reducing the speed until we get to a roughly polar orbit. The reason we want a polar orbit is because if we go in an equatorial orbit, all we're going to be scanning is around the equator. If we go into a polar orbit, then we have the planet's rotation, so the planet's rotating around this way and we're scanning around this way, so we get to scan the whole face of the planet. So let's kill a bit more speed off that, and 300k out. So it's starting to tilt it back the other way. We need to that way, and just add a little bit more speed. So that's roughly 90. That's about 127k. So that should be good. And not having to stick to this religiously. We're just using it as a rough guideline to see where we need to burn. So we can see here our inclination is climbing up, so we want that to be at around 90. And this is a little bit sketchy to control just because of the it's got a massive reaction wheel on there and not a whole lot of mass that it needs to control, so it's really hyper responsive. So it'd probably be better off be putting the fine controls on, which you do just by pressing the caps lock, but I'm not going to worry too much about it, to be honest. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate here. So yeah, we've got our inclination at 90, apoapsis is only slightly higher than what we need, our periapsis just needs to come up a little bit more. We want it ideally between 100 and 120 for the ScanSat sensors that we've got on here, to give the best field of view. And then later on we'll bring it in a bit closer for the magnetometer and the Kethane detector. I think the Kethane detector can work up to about 120k, but the magnetometer I think is about 80k if I remember correctly. But I'm not overly worried about that at the second. So let's add an alarm, and we want to go to the apoapsis. We want to be about 20 seconds away, and then just skip on around. So that's good, and close. And we just want to add a little bit more to the periapsis there. So we're going to bring that up to, let's say 110, should be a good round number. So that should be fine, and we want to go around now to the periapsis and just bring the apoapsis down to about 110. The closer to circular this is, the better the scanning will be. Otherwise you can sometimes get gaps in the map where it's slightly elliptical. On a smaller body like this it's not so much of a problem, but on the bigger planets it can be. So let's set up another alarm, and we want to skip around to the periapsis this time, and set that to 20 seconds, and again just zoom on around, and we're already pointing on the retrograde, so let's just do a small burn here just to get that down to about 110. So yeah, 109.7, 110.1, that's close enough for me. So let's just have another look at this. Where's the moon gone? There we go. So yeah, if we close some of these windows out for a second, if we open up the map window here, you can see this is the orbits that we've done so far around it, so this is how much mapping we've done so far. The darker colour there is the low resolution scanner, which has a higher field of view, so you can see it's got a much bigger scan range. The white one here, the lighter colour, is the high resolution scanner, so it's got a smaller field of view, so it takes a bit longer to scan the whole thing. That's pretty much what you'd expect with a high resolution and a low resolution. If we click on the big map here, and we'll switch the biome part on, and let's turn the orbits off for the moment. So it takes a second just to render in, but you can start to see here you've got different colours here, and that shows the different biomes. So this is really handy when you're planning missions on planets which have biomes. you can use this map to sort of see which biomes you've been to and which ones you need to get to next, and sort of how to get there. So it makes them kind of missions a whole lot easier, and it does look really cool as well. So I really do like having the map in here. There's a couple of other scanning mods out there that I've tried, but this one seems to be the most recently updated, and it has the least amount of problems. A couple of the others that I've tried tend to crash quite a bit, and some of them do a few more things, but I do really like the way that this one works, so it's pretty cool. So all I'm going to do now is switch back to the mothership here, and I'm going to set up a maneuver for Minmus and get that probe into a polar orbit as well. So I'll just fast forward through that while I do it, and because you don't want to see me do the whole thing all over again. And once we're set up to map and we get the maps populated a bit more, I'll be right back. So we want it 97, perfect, and still doing crazy stuff, but yeah, okay. So let's detach this. It's not really necessary to detach this, but it does look cooler. And face the sun again, and extend. Let's bring up our robotics controls, extend the solar panels, extend the scanners, and yeah, that does look really cool. So still don't think, yeah, still out of range for the magnetometer, but later on when we do need that, we can just bring them in closer. Let's activate this Kethane scanner and multispectral and the altimetry English, yeah. Yeah, so let's just rename that so we know which one it is. So that is Minmus Mapper. And let's just close these out for a second and have a quick look at the map. I said have a look at the map, thank you. So if we just fast forward a little bit here, and we'll see it even at very high warp, it will very quickly fill in. And should be about done already. 99.9. So where's that last bit? So let's just fast forward again. That's probably where our could be where our altitude is slightly too low, or it could just be where we've been warping at exceptionally high speed. Let's just bring up our orbital information again. 89.9. Ah, yeah, when we this is what I was saying earlier, if you don't have a perfectly circularized orbit, it can mess up your scan and you'll get a spot that you just can't hit. And obviously when we detached, it's changed our apoapsis up to 103 kilometers. So let's just stop warping there for a minute. And we just want to readjust this to circularize it again. So it's, whereabouts are we at the moment? So we want to add a maneuver, apoapsis, add alarm, and actually, sorry, it's 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Not that we're that far away from it anyway, but by the time I'd done all of that, I could have just waited, but hey ho. And we want to go around to our prograde marker and just burn a little bit. It would also help if we activated the engines. So burn just a bit, that should do it. And now we're just warping again and hopefully pick up that last little chunk. Looks like it's going to hit it. Yeah, so 100%. So quickly we'll have a look at the map here. And let's switch the biomes on. So you can see here the completed map. We have a map of Minmus. It shows all of the biomes on here, so the different colours represent different biomes. We can see the Minmus mapper there. We can see the anomaly there. So it's really useful when we're planning future missions. We can see exactly where we need to go and where we've already been, and it just makes it a lot easier, and it's a lot more fun as well to do it this way. So yeah, like I said before, we do get a little bit of science out of these as well, so let's just switch back to the ship. And yep, fuel tank, brilliant, go away. And analyse the data. So we get 80 science from the multispectral sensor data, and we'll transmit that. And then we get another 80 science for the altimetry data, and we'll transmit that. And then let's just switch on over to the moon mapper. And switch to... And if you ever get this happen when you switch, you don't see your ship there, just switch to the map, switch back, and it will reappear. So let's analyse the data, and we get 60 science from the moon, and analyse data. So yeah, that's our maps complete. We'll have a quick look at the moon map as well. I said have a look at the moon map, thank you. So it's going to take a second to render that. So you can see there's less biomes on the moon, and you've got much bigger target areas to land in, so in that regard it's a bit easier to hit all the biomes. But of course you've got higher gravity on the moon. It's also a lot more rocky as well, and it's not quite so flat, so it makes it a bit more difficult. But you can see here there's lots of Easter eggs hidden on the moon, so we'll probably go and check them out at some point. There's quite a few that I haven't actually seen myself yet, so that'll be quite a fun mission to do. So yeah, so that's the mapper mission. We got some science from it, but the main thing was just getting their maps for future missions. Let's just make sure that that did transmit. Yeah, that's good. And that one didn't, so let's transmit that. Just going to head back to the science centre now, and we'll see how much science we got and what we can spend it on. So I'll be back in a second. So here we are back in the R&D lab. We've got 328 science to spend, which means we can unlock 3 of these nodes on this tier if we want. The solar panels there could be pretty useful, but I think we can probably live without them for the moment. The thermometer would definitely be very useful, so we'll get that. And fuel lines would be really useful as well, so let's grab hold of that. We've also got the Rockomax engine there, which is a reasonably good engine for small landers. And the Kethane converter units and some of the Kerbal attachment system parts there, which is also pretty handy. So 148 science left, so it's a choice between either advanced construction, which gives us, what does this give us? The bigger stack decouplers, which we're going to need eventually anyway. A couple of Infernal Robotics parts there, a Kethane drill, and some of the Extraplanetary Launchpad stuff. And yeah, then the top one we've got the new engines and a couple of new fuel tanks. The Poodle engine's pretty useless, but the this engine's pretty good. It's got a really good ISP for this level, decent thrust, and it's not overly heavy either. And the low profile engine's really good for landers as well. It's a slightly too high a thrust for landing on the moon and Minimus, but you can always thrust limit it, and it's the low profile makes it really good for fitting on the bottom of this tank, and you can then fit legs around it. So yeah, I think we'll go for that one there. So I'm going to call the end of the episode here. We've managed to get a couple of maps for the Moon and Minmus, which I'm sure is going to come in very handy for future missions. We've unlocked some useful parts, especially the thermometer and the fuel lines. Definitely going to come in useful for future missions. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. So take care. Goodbye.